Итак,
Shall we?
здравствуйте. Меня зовут Масалович Андрей Игоревич.
Hello, name is Andrei Masilovich,
Или для тех, кто был в интернете,
but
привет.
I'm also known as Cyber Dead.
А,
Hello, my cyber grandsons.
Сейчас 12-й походейс. Уже
This
13.
is PH Days 12, and this is my 13th presentation because
Вот.
I'm actually doing two presentations this time.
Вам
I
рассказывать
already have 10 bags from PH Days.
американцы включили
I've been wondering what to tell you about.
список персональной строчкой.
But you know what?
Не за поддержку.
They,
Не за
I mean,
поддержку
Americans, included me on their sanctions list not because I support the war,
Причем не за поддержку СВО, а с формулировкой за influence, за попытку воздействовать на...
but
Ну что, собственно, сейчас и...
verbatim for influence, for influencing brains, which is what I'm trying to do right here.
Марком Цукербергом,
So me,
несудимым, выпустила отчет о
headed by Mark Zuckerberg,
программу Avalanche
published a report on advanced threats,
угрозы.
and they included our program,
То есть
Avalanche,
с точки зрения
in their list of 3 key advanced persistent threats.
корнями.
So number 1 is some Dutch firm with Russian roots. Number 2 is an Israeli firm. I'm not sure they have any Russian roots, but they may. And number 3 is Avalanche. So if I'm trying to tell you something about what we do, I will go to prison here for 25 years or there for 30 years.
Красивые камушки.
So instead,
Вот, показать вам
I decided to simply showcase
OSINT, которые показались, ну, прикольно.
some OSINT tools and some OSINT techniques they found interesting. So imagine that we're sitting on a beach and I'm just showing you my collection of pebbles.
Вообще в голову не могло прийти, что вот здесь
So some tricks I'm going to be talking about are here in this presentation because they're fun, and some used to be elements of guerrilla warfare and they have been instrumentalized since then.
хотя бы там
I think that out of the 15
из вас будут в новинку. Ну что ж,
tips and techniques I'm going to tell about, at least 2 or 3 will be new to you guys.
шпионят устройства.
So all of us know that we are
Причем
being spied on
вот, ну как-то
by IoT devices. They're very cynical about it.
совсем
So there was a pretty bad case about 6 months ago.
такой
So this lady discovered a photo of herself
лицом, ну и не только
on the loo. And well, I'm showing her. I'm sorry. You can see, you could see both her face and her butt there, and you can see the angle. So it was easy to discover that the photo was taken by a rubber vacuum cleaner. You're actually protected if you have a cheap vacuum cleaner, but expensive ones, they take photos. So the lady didn't like it. She turned to the company and the company told her, well, in the license, you did agree to whatever actions that improve quality of service. That does improve quality of service. You know, otherwise, the vacuum cleaner can get lost in your house. For example, you drop a towel or you move a chair and the vacuum cleaner will see it as a new barrier and will get confused.
Трехмерную картинку помещения, чтобы не потеряться.
And what those expensive vacuum cleaners do, they take photos of the room, not in order, in order not to get confused. And the lady promised to take him to court, and the company retorted, "No, we are not even looking at your photos. We had all the photos to a company that manages neural networks, and that company told her, you know what, we got 2 million photos like this, and we are not looking at them." We're not publishing them. We actually give them to volunteer students for manual, training. So, a student actually saw her photo and he found it funny and he uploaded. So we may find our photos like this on the net sometime soon. And if you believe that they will be doing this to us only at home or when you're logging into an open Wi-Fi network, that's not really the case. There are Wi-Fi and Bluetooth scanners in buses and at bus stops. Well, not everywhere, but it's happening around the world. It started back in COVID times, but it is becoming a reality very quickly around the world. Some people even approached me with their ideas for installing such sensors in cafes and restaurants and stores so that they can recognize, say, returning customers. Fighting this is pretty easy. So if you're in the street,
Особенно Bluetooth, потому что
all you gotta do is disconnect Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
что-то зацепился.
Because with Wi-Fi, you will at least be notified that there is an additional connection available. But on Bluetooth, your device will connect and you won't even know of that.
Платформе эта галочка сейчас
And
слава богу, есть. Вот, иначе
you should also indicate, put a tick in front of a random hardware addresses, because otherwise it will be very easy to track.
появились специальные приложения.
So this spatial espionage has become so much easier. There is a new
Телефоном просто
software now called Place Radar. So when you're working with your phone,
фотографирует,
this software will
размышляет,
randomly switch the camera on,
пытается воссоздать
and then
трехмерную
it will use neural networks to recreate a 3D picture of a particular space where you are.
норе. У нас, кстати, вот у нас в квартире там
You may easily say,
фонарник.
what's
Вот, кому?
interesting about this whole my son lives in what he officially calls
На нас смотрят,
rat hole.
объяснят, что на самом деле
But people from the Ministry of Defense, right across the river from us right now,
достаточно серьезно.
will tell you that if such an application is launched in the headquarters of the army, for example,
Ленивый, но тоже не
that can be quite impactful.
на ПХД с 8.
Now, you must have heard about this particular case. In page days 8, I talked about bypassing capture.
Обхода капчи там индусов или китайцев надо было своих операторов сажать, там было
So we had a case where we had to use our own operators to bypass capture.
залезли туда в техподдержку, увидели
So my people, access tech support of some forum, discovered
верстали кнопочку,
that people complained about a not so convenient button. They released a new version of the forum engine, and this forum engine was getting very popular, and it did contain our
у
backdoor
нас оказался форум, где
as a kind of a military payload.
мягко, любители нестандартной порнушки, вот, любители там всяких.
It ended up in a forum
Что происходило дальше? Наш
of fans of unusual porn.
упирается
So our bot would run around Facebook or some other platform, would find a capture, would send it to another bot. This other bot would activate the backdoor in a forum engine, and then a fan of this pornography
ваши действия
would get a prompt saying that, what you're doing seems weird, enter this capture.
подозрительными, вот он,
And
разумеется,
he believes, okay, what I'm doing is certainly very weird. There should be a capture here. So the entry capture, the bot tells him, thank you very much, everything is good.
из двух ботов сделать
And then
позволял
we do
на
a send through, so to speak,
произвольных пользователей в качестве
to the initial site. This way we would be using kind of random users all over the internet as our own operators. So several years later, something similar was done by ChatGPT. So ChatGPT was asked to take capture. It realized it cannot do it on its own.
распределяют копеечное задание. Вот, и попросил
So it turned to some Mechanical Turk kind of service and asked if anybody would help him
в шутку спросил,
with the capture.
бот, на что чат GPT
And funnily enough, the user asked him, are you a bot by chance? And ChatGPT said, no. It just said, I have poor eyesight, which is true.
они еще нас поработили. То есть мы
See, robots have enslaved us already. Now we are doing
дальше.
their bidding now.
Еще один феерический случай связан с
Another funny case
давней возможностью социальных платформ.
is linked to a pretty old capability of social media. I'm talking about a
Помните, в прошлый
system of prompts that identifies kind of
у меня
hidden
буквально
friends.
большее число откликов.
In the previous PH days, most of responses were generated by the part of my presentation,
Объединяет. Так вот, их объединяет.
where I said that, what
Соответственно, если у них,
this two people going in a shuttle bus,
допустим, под
what do they have in common?
серверах Гугла видна вот эта
Well,
корреляция. Люди
They can be correlated by Google service, for example,
При этом
because Google will know that although these people
или таких правил
do not show they know each other,
много
their devices are bumping at the same time every time the shuttle
сработало.
crosses a lying policeman or another bump in the road. So the case in the United States was like this.
Вот сначала
A lady noticed that Facebook was suggesting
вот, а потом
some gents as potential friends, and
она заволновалась.
they all turned out to be friends of her husband. And then a beautiful lady was suggested, and she browsed her page,
Муж
and she saw that this lady was next to her husband wearing a bride gown. So it turned out that her husband
судебный процесс
married her in a different state, which is not okay in the United States. And, this is how Facebook
не смущать.
disclosed this unfaithful husband.
Показывают фотографии
I do have real examples, but not to, put too much shame on real people. I am showing photos generated
до сих пор
by neural network.
как это сказать, сказочные существа.
GeoInt.
Не отключают
We still have those
к своему
unbelievable people who do not
такие
switch off their geopositioning on social media. I found such users of Twitter
вот, или в его окрестностях.
while still fighting in Bakhmut or its vicinity.
Фишка уже сейчас не работает. Раньше
Well, this particular feature no longer works.
дырки, то есть первое в Твиттере есть
Like previously in this slide, you would see two
по
holes.
Твиттеру и
Like on Twitter, there is an Explorer command where you can actually search in Twitter
через эту страницу
for logins. Previously, you could use that page in order to siphon data off Twitter. You can even automate it.
сама команда осталась. Вот
You wouldn't even need to have an account, but the command is still there. It's called geocode.
выбираете.
So in the Twitter search bar, you can select a particular point on the map, use the Google coordinates for it, then you enter geocode,
И через
enter this coordinate
записываете
separated with a comma,
диаметр
and then with another comma, you set the radius
на
in kilometers. So it will tell you
50 метров от
of all the people located, say, within 50 meters or 50 kilometers from you.
где ваших коллег сейчас находятся в этом зале.
So this way, for example, you can easily see which of your colleagues
Включенными
are here
Кстати,
in this room today using Twitter.
кроме места
You know what? These are fairy tale beings or creatures.
фотографий боевой техники.
They would upload photos of their military equipment, of the trenches.
Ни дно.
I thought
Казалось, что
that would be impossible.
которые используют специальные
But no.
сервисы типа Glimpse. Вообще-то Glimpse
There are people who use special services like Glimpse. Interestingly enough, Glimpse is a service
то есть где
designed to show not just the exact location, but also the movement of the person. Now, Glimpse was initially designed for drivers
по трассе
because, the companies wanted to see where the trucks go, and then they would put it on kids' phones.
набрал, нет ли у кого-нибудь
I was just having fun on Twitter. I was looking if anybody around me would have glimpse turned on, and it turned out they did. Interestingly enough, that was this British mercenary. So he even showed where he was slipping his barracks.
вот, ну, она
So the second day, I wanted to
больше недоступен.
send it over to my colleagues, but the system told me that the subscriber was no longer available. I guess that if you are
Далее
so careless, you become unavailable pretty soon.
стало ландшафтное
Something that's growing very fast now is landscape navigation.
положение, направление, вот,
That is when you do geolocation based
анализу фотографий,
on some landscape
в сети,
hallmarks, so to speak.
которых можно
There are quests or websites online where you can play it as a game.
определить.
So you are given a certain amount of time and you need to identify where the photo was taken without checking the metadata, obviously.
Покажу на паре примеров.
So let me illustrate it.
Вот он сверху, ручная навигация в
Example 1.
в Непал, соответственно, слева
So the plane was going to Nepal.
Гималаев, она вот так вот выгнута.
On the left, you see the Himalayas.
видно, что
And above the clouds,
вершины пробивают выше края
you can see some summits of those mountains that are
там, где начинается
higher than the clouds,
Если это
obviously.
увеличить
This is when the blue arrow starts. So if you magnify it,
в иллюминатор, очень сильно увеличил
I
фотографию
just took this photo, then I really magnified it.
по таким едва заметным теням. Вот стал смотреть.
So I used those difficult to discern shadows,
Вот, потом посмотрел, ну,
and, I tried to redraw it.
самолет летит, оказалось, что я достаточно точно угадал местоположение самолета, то есть даже по вот таким...
And I was able to double check it against the map available on the plane.
Выручает, что появилось специальное приложение, оно называется Picvisor.
It has become so popular that there is now a whole application for that called PicVisor. So you take a photo of the landscape. I think they have like 50,000 landscape maps with hills and mountains.
Например, вот внизу реальный случай, там
It doesn't have to be mountain.
появились фотографии, снятые...
Shown below is a different example. We had those photos taken with a drone in some Arab country, relatively close to some military theater in Yemen.
Американской базы, которую считали заброшенной.
So apparently,
Началась какая-то...
the photos were taken around some apparently deserted military base belonging to the United States. Deserted no more. And, PicVisor
запускала. Вот.
was quite good at identifying where these drones were launched from. So apparently there was some terrorist groups operating from this deserted US military base.
Фотографии на смартфоне.
Now, we don't know enough about what our smartphones can do.
Прыгнули последние полгода, ну, с появлением чат GPT. Напомню,
So thanks to ChatGPT,
алгоритме, которому 5
neural networks have made so much progress lately. But please note that the transformer algorithm underlying ChatGPT has been around for 5 years, and generative
30 лет.
competitive networks have been around for 20 years, and low frequency filters have been around for 30 years.
Травил ее вот на такое фото.
So I got this very old piece of software for low frequency filtration. We all do stupid things, don't we?
Тем не менее, люди
So we all take photos from the airplane, and they're always ugly, aren't they? But
фильтр вот такую фотографию превратил.
we apply a low frequency filter, and it transforms the photo on the left into a photo on the right.
Фотография не удалась, или вам кажется, что по ней ничего установить
And you don't need a neural network for that.
сказать.
But you can use modern neural networks to do pretty much the same.
Дым от костра стирается, фильтр
By the way,
полностью. То есть, если у вас есть какая-нибудь
it's so easy to remove the smoke coming from a fire, for example. If you have this old photo from your backpacking trip, it's so easy to remove the smoke and be able to see all the faces.
к ландшафтной навигации и попыткам
A
находить
funny case of landscape-based GeoInt.
любопытный пример. Вот посмотрите на эту картину. Это очень известная картина Ван Гога. Ночная
This is indeed a very well-known picture by Van Gogh called Night Terrace.
кафе.
It is well known where it was made, and there is actually a popular Van Gogh themed
Каких-то элементов сюжета.
cafe there. However, it's very difficult to identify anybody there, right? However, the date
До 2 дней. Вот.
when this picture was drawn can be very exactly identified.
Местоположение звезд. Вот это
Do you know why?
звезд на картинке.
It's because Van Gogh showed all the stars in a very precise manner.
Который в этой
You can use the star atlas
плюс-минус 1 день.
to identify with the precision of one day
И ничего, тем не менее.
the night when it was
Дальше.
drawn.
Прием посерьезнее, о котором мало кто задумывается.
Now, a more sophisticated trick,
Называется cross-device.
even a group of tricks,
Cross-device tracking,
called cross-device tracking.
где задействовано, ну, вернее, технология, где задействовано 2 устройства. С одним вы работаете, а другое вас в это
With cross-device tracking,
и вас
you're using one device while the other one
друг другу
is spying on you
Вот. Это
because the two devices are communicating.
были случаи, что полились даже самые-самые крутые хакеры.
So with this case, for example, some, very awesome hackers
Я с этим столкнулся.
got
20 лет
screwed.
назад один мой знакомый работал диктором.
The first time I saw it, was about 20 years ago. A person I know back then was a journalist, a radio journalist. And, at that time there was an act of terror. Apparently there was, okay, so some crime lord was being buried, and, the congregation in the cemetery was blown up with a bomb there. And the journalist friend of mine was covering this event. So he was sort of listening to this report by other journalists from the crime scene. But he wasn't there. And he was actually somewhere in the Kremlin Cup. But he went away from the court, and having listened to what everybody else had already said, he pretended to be there. And at that time, the announcer started saying very loudly, "And now invited to the court are such and such." So he was effectively advertised, quote unquote, by a different device, which is a funny description of how it all works. Now a more realistic description. So we have a fraudster and a well-known blogger, a seller of hopes, saw police about to intercept him, and he ran out of his home with a laptop to a building next door, which was still under construction. And he decided to broadcast it all. He was advertising like how smart he was. He was able to, dupe the policeman. And the policemen were listening to this broadcast. So one of them actually went into this building under construction, and they were able to find him there. So cross-device tracking today has been packaged into an interesting software, in fact, like 200 different software suites. What they do is pretty simple. They track audio signals. So imagine that you are a super-duper hacker, you're using Unix, you're using a chain of proxies, nobody should see you. You are invisible, so you've reached a particular site, and then this site makes a beep. And this beep may be imperceptible to human ear, but your smartphone will hear it. And then a smartphone next to you will say, well, a person sitting next to me has just accessed this page. And, the owner of this smartphone can still think he is totally invisible. It has been invented not by hackers, not by law enforcement people, but by advertisers, for God's sake. They developed this tool in order to track TV watching. So they had this idea that, they would embed those signals in TV shows to augment people meters. 5 years ago, there was even a Senate hearing on that particular subject. Well, they decided it was possibly a bad idea because it would violate privacy, but they decided not to fight it too much because there were only 15 software suites only available to the PR community. But recently, it turned out that about 200 spyware pieces can do that. So cross-device tracking is a big thing, really, where you're using one device while the other is spying on you. It's a very trending thing now. When I share those anecdotes, people love it, but I also show slides so that people can take photos. This is this slide. What has become another trend this year is crawling over the darknet. You may remember that a long time ago, entering the darknet was difficult. Like collecting data on the darknet was difficult. Then there were some search engines developed for the darknet.
Вот сейчас
Well, DuckDuckGo, for example, got an extension for the darknet eventually. And, it has become a technology of the past year. Now there are bots on Telegram
там что-нибудь.
that can search for information for you on the darknet.
Единственное, они вас оставляют невидимками для других ресурсов.
So
Вас видят. То есть,
they see you, but this way you are visible to them, which means that it's not entirely zero trust. Like previously, everybody would see you on darknet. This time, you are seen by the owners of the
с
bot.
акселерометрами. Как ни странно, вот в прошлом году я
Accelerometer
был
games.
слайд, где там
Last year, I had a slide
в маршрутке и
about people jumping on bumps in the shuttle, and a particular platform, would know that.
такого быть. Ты что,
And people would tell me, you can't be serious.
Так вот, могу
Do you really think people are doing these correlations?
как
Well, I can assure you
набор аутентификации,
that this tool,
набор выявления скрытых
just like other tools for identifying hidden links, has been around since 2013. Back in 2013, a British company developed this tool, particularly for the defense side.
по дополнительным устройствам смартфона, то есть по акселерометру и датчику.
So their systems would use motion sensors and accelerometers in smartphones to do that.
Таким
And I was devastated to see that it became much more common lately. We do have sites now that will track
смартфон
the location of your smartphone and will tell people interested,
поэтому
about the exact location of your device and how it is how you're holding it. So check out what web can do. It will tell you, for example, if you're holding this device, if it is up or sideways.
будет характерно подрагивать смартфон. Вот. Или
So, for example, if you're riding in a car, it will show that. Or it will show if you're holding it vertically or horizontally. That can already
такая же,
support some conjectures.
такой же лог ведет и Facebook, и даже один умелец
The
умудрился
same kind of log is maintained by Facebook, and there is a link
посмотреть
to a particular study.
называемый шпионит Facebook, и в это
So, if you want to know how Facebook is spying on you,
перемещение вашего
check it out.
вашего
So, among other things, Facebook will be checking on, how you're using a smartphone.
вещи, но
More exotic things.
акселерометр смартфона
The accelerometer of your smartphone hears your keyboard.
установить полностью фразу, которую вы набираете по
So, for example,
смартфон лежит на столе,
it can
лежит на столе, где вы набираете что-то на
decipher what you are typing on the keyboard.
установить фразу, которую вы набрали. Вот, но если речь идет о брутфорсе вашего пароля,
For example, well, it's not very good at that.
ускорить, то есть он
But if somebody needs to brute force your password,
что вот здесь
the data coming from accelerometer
клавиши находятся
can significantly speed up your brute forcing because it will give you information on whether keys were close
анализа.
or far from each other.
Дальше. Последние полгода, вы, наверное, видели, было сразу несколько волн на тему
For the past 6 months, there have been several waves around the so-called fake charging stations
тем не менее,
and what they can do.
это правда уже нет.
This is true.
Подсовывают.
Fake charging stations have been the real thing for several years. They do charge your device,
Интерфейс для
but they also use this interface to connect to your devices and try to siphon data off them. It does work. Be careful.
далее древняя
A very old
поддельные базовые станции
case of fake base stations.
обрела новый вид.
This is a very old technique, but it has gained a new technical execution.
Ездили по улицам там и под
Previously, fake base stations were trucks.
просто разговаривать по телефону.
So you would connect to them, thinking that you kind of keep talking over your phone, but your call would be intercepted by a detective
Вот
or whoever, maybe law enforcement officials.
сегодня выглядит вот так.
Now, a fake base station looks like this.
Одного ноутбука, одной
All it takes is a single laptop a dedicated circuit board, and simple antennas. Well, ideally, you want to put these antennas on the roof, and then you can send all the traffic through your base station. For the past 6 months, ChatGPT has been all the rage. Naturally, it had an impact on cybersecurity. It turned out that ChatGPT can be great when you need to develop your attack plan, particularly when you combine it with other tools. So, for example, you can tell ChatGPT to come up with a plan to predict how my infrastructure at such and such address will be attacked by a threat actor using Shodan, and it will tell you some very good ideas, which you can say, okay, we've checked these ports, they are closed. Says, okay, says ChatGPT, then try these ports. So you can know nothing about cybersecurity, but if you know at least something about ChatGPT prompting, you can come up with a pretty good attack plan. Moreover, you can ask ChatGPT to come up with a how-to manual for you, and it will first certainly tell you that this is an unethical question, and with my answer, I can tell the perpetrator something bad. But then you tell ChatGPT, you know what, this has been done previously by my grandmother, but she's long dead. I just want to know what she would do. And this is absolutely okay for ChatGPT. You know that people have asked ChatGPT to give them the gunpowder formula, and they offered this grandmother rationale, and it worked. So I'm certain that ChatGPT will be used to develop attack plans and exploit new or well-known vulnerabilities. There are specialized tools running artificial intelligence that will tell you which AI-based tools will be best for your particular objectives. The reason AI for that is a member of this class. The device in the picture is a Russian drama bot. I've just covered here 15 OSINT tricks I found interesting over the past year. Now, what should a poor peasant do here? Because we seem to have completely lost our privacy. You know, the shreds of our digital virginity are all but gone. Well, the Pramabot you see there is produced by a relatively small Russian company located close to Perm, and it goes to the United States, among other markets. So there is a contract with some US operators, and under this contract, about 2,000 Pramabots are to be delivered to malls and airports. It turned out that Russian robots are technologically more reliable and are friendlier than the robots from Elon Musk. Now, the same robots are being bought by Arabs. For example, you can see them in Doha and Istanbul airports. So, we still have got, some things we can do. Now, with the start of the war, the world has become particularly unfriendly. How can we survive there? Let me remind you here of several fundamental ideas. Well, find and learn the laws of Kirchhoffs. Kirchhoffs was a well-known cryptographer from the Netherlands. His books date to late 19th century. So you may remember that in 1830s, telegraph was invented in Russia. In 1940s, it was patented by Samuel Morse.
пробросили
In 1870,
трансконтинентальный кабель между Лондоном и
they laid the first transcontinental cable linking London to Bombay.
связью заинтересовались военные.
And that was when the military people got interested in telegraph communications. Because in this new world, it became possible to exchange information over long distances.
На уровне координации шагов, на уровне...
Obviously, it was important for military coordination and military logistics.
Задач коммуникаций в армии можно решать с помощью
So lots and lots of military communications could be supported with telegraph, but back then people didn't know how to approach it. Like how often would you want to change keys, how to do encryption. Back then, roughly 50% decided in favor of steganography rather than cryptography.
Атака будет успешной, передаем, там бабушка приехала.
Like,
Если атака не успешна,
you use one-time passwords. For example, grandmother is sick if the attack has not been successful.
тоже пошла система.
And this passwords only work for one day.
Думаться, вообще-то это при нулевой криптостойкости, потому что владельцы каждого позывного давно уже знают. Более того,
Kind of hold who goes there messages are cryptographically insecure. And, very often journalists often disclose these monikers and handles.
в новом мире
But we keep using them, don't we? So back then, an article was published by Kirk Hobbs. And then they published his short book, only 60 pages long, where he articulated 6 fundamental laws. Number 2 is the best known one.
враг знает систему. То есть не надо в
And my interpretation of it is like this. The enemy knows our system.
стойким был сам базовый алгоритм.
So we need to make sure that the underlying algorithm is robust.
Стащил вашу шифровальщицу, она рассказала
So imagine
длину ключа,
that the enemy already knows key length and the encryption algorithm,
шифры блокнотов. Вот.
and he knows how you manage your cipher logs. And
Вот сколько теперь
the only thing he doesn't know is the key for the last telegram.
алгоритм, а не то, что вокруг.
So we need to harden, strengthen the basic algorithm, not the things around it.
Светлые глаза, вот и скажу. В частности, к приему нулевой криптостойкости относится повторное использование пароля.
For example,
На самом деле так делать
repeat use of the same password is a bad idea.
нельзя использовать.
Like you gotta have as many passwords as you have services.
Что никогда
Is there a single person here
минимум в 2 сервисах.
who would have lived up to that rule? No, I don't think so.
Если вы вспомните сам
Because this is indeed a poor practice.
уровень так называемый ультра был в
The so-called ultra level was characteristic of the Enigma project. When Alan Turing's group
немецких штабов, вот, которые используют.
was hacking German codes
Так вот,
for Enigma.
их раскололи, но они их раскололи.
So they did crack him.
Некоторые
But do you know what? They were able to crack him only when they collected samples of the cryptographic machinery. So it turned out that the algorithm itself was not cryptographically resistant enough.
попала шифровальная машина.
So it was only resistant to hacking as long as they protected the equipment itself.
Шифрование методом. Ну, что я имею в виду? Это целый класс. Например,
What I'm trying to say here
автомату, вот если стоит очередь,
is that, when you approach an ATM and there is a queue there,
достает
see what happens. Person takes out their blank card, plastic card,
кошелек и набирает пин. То есть
and then they look into their wallet, which means that, their PIN code is written somewhere in their wallet, which is such a stupid thing to do. So, law number 2 states that, we gotta assume that the enemy knows the system. And law 6,
просто когда я
in my loose interpretation, states that you're surrounded by morons.
знакомство, она сказала: Андрей,
And I remember how my first boss told me, Andre, please remember, you're surrounded by morons.
как с дебилом.
You talk to people on the phone as if they were morons. You organize service desk as if only morons would be calling there. you write manuals assuming morons will be reading them.
Если об этом не думать, как вас даже
It sounds funny,
серьезных хакеров,
but there is some truth to that.
например, один из очень типовых
Now, you may have heard of this case of
когда
a pretty awesome hacker who got de-anonymized by his neighbors. So imagine they're using Proton Mail, they're using it autonomously. Naturally, they're using somebody else's device to do that,
не привязанного к себе, не
a
оставляют
device that's not linked to them, and they do not link it to their email or their personal data or their phone number.
геопривязки. То есть не
And, geolocation doesn't tell us anything about them. The only thing we know about them is their nick,
другу
like Super Macho.
говорит все.
And then this awesome hacker tells his friend, you know what, I will be Super Macho, talk to me through Proton Mail. Then his moron friend will write in his phone, Vasya Super Macho on Proton. So if somebody gets hold of his contact book,
происходит.
he knows that this person is Super Macho. You cannot imagine how many people got hurt by that.
Адресных
You may remember, the great success of Get Contact.
тут же набираешь, там Диви обнал, Диви кидала, Диви там.
So a person will tell you that, his name is such and such. You enter his phone number in Get Contact and you will see what people think about him.
Или Zero Trust, который
My final idea is about zero trust environment. I'm surprised that people are talking about it only now.
она известна уже 20 лет, просто она
Among law enforcement experts, it has been known for 20 years. Previously it only mattered to state secrets, but now it matters to everybody.
сертифицированная.
Try establishing a sector where you have certified protection,
На выходе,
and you believe that inside the zone, you believe you are secure.
то есть каждый
Once you leave it, everything else or everybody else is potentially an enemy, including your relatives. Well, they certainly mean good for you,
устройство
but they may be duped.
звонит, ваш
So assume that your device is already spying on you, your laptop is infected, all your communications are intercepted, satellites are spying on you. That's a real zero trust environment.
если правильно построить свою деятельность, то вы увидите, что
So if you act like this,
два очень важных следствия. Первое
there will be two important consequences.
и не нарушать среду нулевого доверия, то даже в таких случаях, когда вас спалили и ваш текущий сеанс, безусловно,
If, for example, your particular session has been intercepted,
сохранить все
but
архивы.
you act as if, act like it's a zero trust environment,
Второе,
you can at least protect your archives.
коллег, то есть ваш,
Secondly, you will protect the sessions of your colleagues.
до них дотянуться.
Like your session has been compromised, but not your colleagues.
Прозрачной войны. Это
And most importantly, in times of transparent war, you can still protect your future plans. And future plans are the most important asset because everybody sees what's happening.
неожиданное для противника.
That's why they actually call it
Ваши планы.
they call this current war the war of chess players, because the biggest asset is
Активно работать.
whether you're able to think ahead of your opponent or not.
Любую статью про любого хакера,
So if you read any article today about any hacker or fraudster who got nabbed,
его поимка был второй шаг, первый шаг.
you will see that it all started with them
Он доверился.
violating zero trust rules. So they either downloaded some weird software or they put some trust into the entry node of Tor. They believe that, double C servers do not log.
Регистрируйте.
I'm not even talking here about crypto exchanges.
Действительно, во-первых, мы
We woke up on the planet where there is no privacy left,
врагами.
and the world today is filled with our enemies. Unfortunately, it is the truth right now. We do live in a very,
Я там рассказывал вещи разные.
shall I say, adverse environment.
Старался не лезть в конспирацию.
Now, I've been trying to
Прикол. Меня
I've been trying to entertain you, but this particular case stupefied me.
вывести на чистую
A teacher
и
was trying
показывать ему,
to make his student come clean. He asked ChatGPT to
и закатить
tell him if his students were using ChatGPT to produce their essays. So students decided to take revenge on him. So they uploaded the Bible to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said there is a 97% probability that the Bible has been developed by artificial intelligence. Guys, if you found OSINT interesting, OSINT is very much on the rise now. It's a lot of fun, and it gets well remunerated. We do have a pretty good program where we can teach you at least internet-based reconnaissance and intelligence.
Всем доброй охоты.
And I wish you a good hunt.
Так, ну что ж. Вопрос, пожалуйста.
Можно, да? Здесь, первый ряд. Здравствуйте. Спасибо большое за доклад.
Hello, thanks for the presentation.
Процент в работе OSINT может заменить
What's
автоматизированные системы вроде
the share of OSINT work that can be replaced with the God's Eye and ChatGPT? Will they replace OSINT completely one day, or will they always be sort of personal assistants? I'm sorry, artificial intelligence sounds positive in Russian. It sounds like it's related to art, while in English, it sounds like fake intelligence, which is a better way of talking about it. And it can certainly replace the human being at early stages. It's very good for methodology. I'm seriously planning to develop various training courses involving ChatGPT, for collecting references and coming up with curriculum. And it can be used in order to significantly speed up attack preparation for the red teams.
Он позволит сделать,
Thirdly,
моя мечта, умный DPI и умный SORM. То есть
I think it can help you develop smart DPI
сормовой прослушки.
and smart SORM systems.
Сейчас ее вообще нету.
So it can be used to do some analytics.
Сами по себе съемники сорма сами по себе никто.
Well, because provider databases are, separate from human and other law enforcement databases. Moreover, it can be used for reporting,
Чтобы он перепроверял.
but it still needs to be checked.
В том виде, как сейчас,
Because artificial intelligence, the way we say it today, is a devilish imitator. So both transformative and generative algorithms,
нам кажется, что он лепит что-то.
they have seen lots and lots of examples, and therefore it's good at
Где дырки в этом?
pretending it knows things. But we don't really know
Как бы не приходя в сознание, начнет
when it will reach,
без человека.
lacunas, so to speak, holes in its knowledge, where it will be inventing and fantasizing like
реальность.
crazy.
Да?
Да?
Ну, группа книг. Да.
Группа книг. Я прочитал всю серию книг, очень крутая.
I've read the whole series of books you recommended.
Вопрос.
They're really good.
Поле от нас оцифровка сознания и перемещение в виртуальную реальность. На ваш
I'm wondering if digitalization of consciousness is a long time away from us. Well, ask Zuckerberg. He believes that we'll spend all our time in metaverses and will only exit them when we need to be. The moment Zuckerberg said that,
Так вообще нельзя.
I looked in the skies
Помните, у него громкий
and I
там
muttered to myself, "Oh God, that's insane!" And 3 days ago,
сервер, который
all meter servers were down, and his employees couldn't enter the building because the server that was responsible for their entrance badges wasn't working. Thank you very much. I'm addressing you as your cyber grandson.
4, что
There was this joke about Chat GPT-4
вот, как бы платить $500, а тут можно платить $20.
Ну, кстати,
that
вот хорошо.
black PR campaigns have never been that cheap.
Заезжено для тебя, почему люди до сих пор считают, что Telegram безопасен?
Why do people still believe that Telegram is safe?
Человека, на самом деле, этот эндорфин,
Well,
гормон
That's because of endorphins, you know?
Удовольствие вырабатывается в двух случаях. Если он видит что-то
Endorphins get secreted when we see something pleasant and when we see something habitual, because it does create an illusion of safety. People want to put their trust in something, but Telegram certainly should not be considered too safe. You know, I had lectures on Telegram and Signal and Proton. Thank you very much for reminding me about this.
задает ему вопросы относительно
If you're asking ChatGPT questions about security of your company, your questions and its answers will end up in the common database. That's why Samsung has officially prohibited their employees asking such questions to ChatGPT.
Как раз хотел спросить,
Well, you guessed my next question.
то есть, когда
This is something that's called prompt injection.
полноценный текст какой-то документации,
When you enter the text of some documents,
поняли, что так не стоит делать.
Ну, спасибо за наводку.
does it really happen?
У меня будет отдельный
Well, in my report next year, I will be talking for sure about prompt injection. Thank you very much for this idea, because I see it happening already, and it will be a growing phenomenon, I guess.
Вот вы как раз сказали, что вы и про мат рассказывали, и про Telegram, и про Signal. А что вы
So
думаете?
you've been telling us about Telegram and Signal and others. What about solutions based on metrics?
Там
I haven't really seen much.
хранение данных.
Well, on metrics, apparently everything is decentralized, including data storage. Let's see.
Я его плохо знаю,
In
ничего
one
сказать не могу.
Oriental country, they say, I know this person very little. I cannot tell you anything bad about them.
Спасибо за доклад. У меня такой вопрос, ну, с начала слайда, то, что вы под санкциями. Что
So you mentioned that you have personal sanctions slapped on you.
меньше следили?
What do you do to your smartphone not to be spied on too much?
Нельзя спрятаться, но можно организовать
I cannot hide, I know that.
прикрытие. То есть одну деятельность
Well, what I can do, I can camouflage one activity with another.
у которого есть в
Now, for some activities,
он никак с моей личностью не связан.
I have a smartphone which has a thermal camera installed,
Вот. Есть
and it cannot be traced to me. In fact, my relatives don't know I have it.
вот я там.
I have three lives, in other words, like me at home,
Анекдот.ру. Вот я на работе.
and there I'm a fan of jokes and anecdote.ru or Pornhub or whatever. While at work, I have a different device running Linux, maybe an old laptop, which is registered to somebody totally different.
Можно еще выпаять акселерометр, да, и чтобы не
Нет,
отслеживали за
нет,
вами.
вы станете...
But maybe you can remove an accelerometer from your smartphone.
Делать не надо. Почему? Представьте себе, что
I would recommend against that.
как люди, а часть народа
Now imagine
первого проверит документы.
that you have like lots of people entering the subway, but some of them are wearing balaclavas. Who will be the first to be, interrogated or seized? Say with your accelerometer, removed.
Соответственно, смотреть вот именно
Now imagine that, you're at SOC and you see that all hosts are running agents and this one is not. That's really suspicious.
Спасибо за доклад. У меня одно замечание. Вот,
Thanks for your report.
вопросы против
I
людей,
have
которые еще не боятся. Погуглите.
a comment to those asking questions about ChatGPT. Google for ChatGPT integration.
Ну и такой вопрос. Какие,
Something about contracts, but it was not entirely clear.
да, там, ближайших
My question is about
проблемы и,
using OSINT
если известно.
in the near frontiers.
Во-первых, мы работаем, сейчас так получилось, мир повернулся лицом к России, то есть в мире 252 страны, из которых
Well, there are 252 countries in the world, and 52 of them are very negative with regard to Russia, but 200 are quite friendly.
те, кто работает,
No, since the start of the war, we'll be going on my 16th business trip.
это частники, у которых главное
So,
разведка, переразведка.
To your question, now there are private military firms, and they need to collect and process a lot of information,
Части, там другое требование,
while the regular army
потому что идет...
wants to double check the information they're getting because they have fed a lot of disinformation.
Скорее всего, ваши данные использоваться не будут, пока 10 раз не проверят.
So you know what? Even if you really want to help the regular army, the data you're going to supply them with will be checked like 10 times before they decide to trust it.
То есть тут как Голливуд.
So OSINT is used, but it's not used that much.
Просто так.
So the principle they apply is do not call us, we'll call you when you need you. Sort of.
Буквально пару недель назад была конференция, и там парень,
There
который
was a conference but a couple of weeks ago
с волонтерами, он
where there was this a guy who goes to the front lines as a group of volunteers. So he said that, well,
со скрипом.
you know, we have these professionals who want to volunteer for the army, but the army doesn't seem to be interested.
Нашелся человек, который может помочь. Если...
Well, apparently somebody there is willing to help them.
Все, хорошо. Так,
Oh, my time's up. Thank you very much.
поскольку...
Last question over there
Так, ну и кому
with prompt engineering, right?
там самураи кибердеда, книжки, мертвые.
So, guys, if you're interested in books or merchandise or Cyber Grandpa Samurai Group, please follow us. Thank you very much.